Stop scaling your stress and start scaling your systems. Jeff Dudan built, branded, and sold a 240 unit monster. Now he's doing it again at Homefront Brands. He's here to show us how to turn our intellectual property into wealth generation machines. Jeff, welcome to the pod.
So excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
Jeff, most of the conversation in business strategy recently is around moats. They use AI as a moat. They use sophistication as a moat. But your business, one of franchising and licensing, specifically has to do with intellectual property. What do we need to know about intellectual property, specifically brand, as a moat?
I had a great business coach. He was the president of Husqvarna North America for 18 years. He came here, and that's the outdoor power equipment company. He came here. He came to that company when it was 29 million in the United States, and he built it to $530 million through a dealership network and going and converting dealers from other chainsaw and blower and weed whacker type companies. And, you know, he always impressed upon me a couple of lessons, one of which was you always need to prioritize getting paid for what you know. And so, you know, in the franchise game, you know, our systems, our processes, our know-how, our brand. I mean, franchising is basically like a big multi-tenant lease model. So, you know, our IP is our know-how, it's our customer base, it's our awareness, and we take that and we license that out to individual operators. One thing I heard that's interesting of late is that 83% of companies' value attribution in transactions is now to their IP.
Wow.
So, and it's amazing. People don't realize, you know, you run through all the levels of business. So people start a small business and sometimes it'll be successful. They'll bring it to me and they'll say, hey, should I franchise this business? Is this franchisable? Is this something you could help me with? And the first thing I'll say is, do you have your trademark? You know, what have you protected? And if they don't have even their trademark applied for, there's a good chance that somebody else is using some version of that name somewhere else, and you're dead before you ever get started. So I would think even before you start your business, invest the $1,200 or $2,000 in picking a name for your business that is trademarkable and get that process started. Because if you are successful, and does anybody really start a business without the idea of being successful? No. And if you are successful and one day you get to transact that business, which is the role a business plays in our life, then you're going to need to have as much IP as possible. So at one level, it's okay. You're just starting out, simple, basic, get your trademarks. Now, as your business grows and people get so busy building their business, I was sitting in a room with a guy named Dan Sullivan, who's the strategic coach. And Dan is 80 years old. And at 79 years old, he applied for 75 patents on his work. So people don't realize, like, if let's just say you made a form. I'm holding up a piece of paper for those on Apple. Like, say you just made a simple form, but it was something that you made up, and maybe it was a, you know, I have a tool that I created called Hidden Strategies, and it's simply 3 big columns on the page with some specific questions to look at what are areas in your business that are underperforming, and then a little process to think it through and decide if, and then to use regression analysis to see if I wasn't doing this today and I was going to start doing it, would I do it the same way again? And it actually reveals in many of the areas that you're frustrated with in your business, like how you should actually be doing it. And then the question is, well, if that's the way you should be doing it, what are all the things keeping you from doing it that way? Okay, well, that's a patentable tool. And I was working with one of the leading patent and trademark attorneys, and he said, look, every patent you might, and he does it for flat rate. He goes, but every patent that you get me, that I get for you, is worth up to $1 million in enterprise value. So,
wow.
You know, so it's something that people don't realize. It's like cash is like oxygen. You don't realize how much you need it until you don't have any. It's the same thing with IP. You don't realize how many opportunities you miss to create enterprise value in your business by protecting your IP until you're at the closing table and you're making that list and they're attributing incredible value to all of the things. So
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, it's a great opening question, and I'm very passionate about. And of course, the later in my career, the more important it is. If I want to really share what I've learned over 30 years of building businesses with the world, I have to organize it. And if I'm going to take the time to organize it, then I should also take the time to protect it.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think one of the interesting things that people don't think about brand, that people think, well, you got a logo, you got a name, and they don't think about the operational execution that goes underneath that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The brand is only what the operational strategy can make of it. And the operational strategy is only what the brand name can make of it. They have to work as partners from my perspective. What is the importance and the weight that you put on the operational execution compared to that of the name, the website, the coloring, and then the look and feel of the brand?
Okay. I'm not sure I understand the question. What is the weight I put on operational IP versus
Yeah,
traditional IP?
yeah. So if if you're in the licensing business or franchise business, I would imagine there's some sort of operating standards that come along with someone
Sure.
signing a franchise. A high-end brand needs to have a high-end operational execution model. A discount brand could probably have a little bit more of an efficiency-based discount operational model. Um, what is what sorts of things are you thinking about when you're pairing a brand with the operations behind that brand and what you expect of your franchisees and licensors?
Yeah. So business process type patents are generally more difficult to get. And if you think about it from a risk perspective, what is the greatest risk that you're going to be shut down? Okay. So if the first level is what you said does somebody else, and by the way, when you file a patent, the patent doesn't really move over to the registry for 5 years. So that when you go through a patent process, you apply for, or trademark process, you apply for a trademark. Then in 3 to 6 months, they're going to tell you whether they like it or they don't. And we're going to publish it for opposition. Then they're going to publish it in several public places where other attorneys look and see if it offends anybody's mark that they have, or if anybody out there, is going to object to it. And if not, they'll give you a conditional, they will issue it. But it really, up until the fact that it's been issued for 5 years, anybody can challenge it. And let's just say there's a company out in California, a little service business or something like that, that uses the same name that we use, but they use it just in a local market. Maybe we didn't see them or whatever it is. I mean, if their use predated ours, then they can challenge our trademark for that company name or for that product name or whatever that is. And if I have 100 franchise owners out there that all have branded trucks, t-shirts, websites, and have built the brands, that's a real challenge. So those are the types of things that can provide a situation where you could be, your business could be disintermediated in a way, with the right challenge. And if you have a product that is central to your business, that's another area. Not only from the trademark perspective, what's it called, but then once you trademark it and then you start having success with it. And it's interesting, you usually don't get the challenges until you start having success. Right. And then then it's like, and then people take notice of what you're doing. And then they're going to see, okay, well, does that product offend our product on a similar patent? And, if so, how? And then they might challenge you that you can't use it or make the claims or whatever it is. So I put most of the weight on things that can threaten the business, and where the continuity of your business forces you to, threatens your ability to conduct commerce in the way that you were before. As far as the other stuff that's internal, you look at that, and that might be That might be more useful when you have, let's just say you have an employee and they're going to maybe go out and then create a competitive business at some point in the future, and then they take your business processes, but you've got those protected. That would be that would be how those would probably be most useful in terms of that. But you know, for what we do, it's mostly the consumer facing type things.
Yeah. Yeah. I was at that application process maybe 7 years ago with one of my brands. We just did a complete rebrand of about, I don't know, call it 15 or 20 entities. Did a rebrand and filed the application, and they put it out on the, I guess, on the FBO or whatever it is where they advertise the brands.
Mm-hmm.
And the next week, we got a letter, a FedEx letter that started like this. It said, Mr. Walker, our company, I'm not going to mention the company, our company is the global leader in this industry with 125,000 employees. That's the way the letter started. And apparently it was too similar for him. And we
Right.
spent 2 years, I think, in and out of federal court and mediation going through that. And finally, we just had to give up because there's endless capital there to fight you. The idea that there is a predatorial nature to those incumbents that are able to maybe they don't have the legitimate excuses or legitimate reasons why they're able to attack smaller competitors, but they've got the capital necessary, has led me to believe for a long time that it makes sense that if we're going to launch a new brand, we also have to have the capital to defend it against litigation simultaneously.
Yes.
There's no reason to start a new brand unless you also have the capital to defend it, because you can't get a brand without the defensive mechanism in place. At least the ability to be able to scare off competitors. How big a role is litigation in the brand and franchise licensing space?
Overall, or with respect to IP?
With respect to IP.
Yeah. So we've had to defend ourselves, and we've definitely had to defend ourselves. We've had to send cease and desist letters. We've had to go farther than that. We've had to negotiate the unbranding of incumbents that started up. Okay, they got a little bit too close to our name with our service offering, and do I believe it was intentional? Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was somewhere where we would have a big operator, and they would create something that was very, very close to it. And I believe it was with the intention of causing confusion. And generally, they're not that sophisticated, because a sophisticated person would be creating their own brand and they wouldn't be playing that game. So, those are generally pretty harmless, and something can be negotiated. You give them a little bit of time to rebrand their trucks and those types of things, and then if you have to, you file a claim to enforce it and those types of things. On the other side, where we have created marks that we felt were not confusing and not conflicting with other marks, but maybe the other people took a different position, then there's things that you can do. And I always, I had my first franchise attorney always told me, you need to be respected. You need to try to always work it out with franchisees, with vendors, resolve conflicts and avoid litigation. But once it goes to litigation, it's to the death.
Yeah.
And you never go into litigation without, the view that you're going to win and what you need to do. So look, we've done things like coexistence agreements. We really don't offend you. You really don't offend us. It's a different space. Look, we'll file a coexistence agreement that says we can both operate. And, as long as we don't start doing what they do and they don't start doing what we do, then that's fine. There's been other things where there's been a small little player. I mean, when we were already having success and it wasn't clear whether they predated us or didn't predate us, and then in a coexistence agreement, but it's too similar in services, then we'll even entertain the idea of some small settlement and some funds to help people rebrand. And if it's a small business and they're going to get a check that they didn't expect, and if they did literally start after us, then they don't have that much invested in it. So they'll, generally a small somebody, there's a math equation in terms of dollars that will resolve that matter. The worst is when you realize that there's a potential conflict. It would be relatively inexpensive to deal with it today, but they just won't respond.
Yeah.
And I had a situation. So I had my first business that I started in the summer of 1989. It was a college painting business on top of a mountain in Boone, North Carolina. And I was going to Appalachian State there. I was a mountaineer. And my buddy and I started a painting business. And his name was Davidson. My name was Dudan. And we called it D² painting service. And I don't know, when you talk about companies with 125,000 employees, Square D Electrical.
Yeah.
Huge company.
Yeah.
Massive company. They make, fuse boxes and all, fuses and breakers and electrical equipment, a massive global international company. And we got a letter from them. And it was like, hey, it was a cease and desist and all the things, right? And we took it to an attorney and, spent at the time, our $300 with an attorney or whatever, it's a little shade tree attorney in Boone, North Carolina. And he said, well, why don't I write him a letter and tell him what you're doing and that you're not offending the trademark? And they wrote back and actually responded and said, as long as we don't take that company national under that name, and as long as our services are painting and, however we defined our services, painting, pressure washing, and sealing and coating and things like that, and we didn't use the business outside of North Carolina, that they would leave us alone. But they reserve the right to sue us, to Bolivia.
Yeah.
Or oblivion, whichever one was farther.
Many of the individuals that watch the podcast are interested in the topics of wealth, legacy, and leaving, at least leaving some capital behind. A lot of folks have had exits already. When I think about a lot of the great franchising and licensing stories of the last 15 or 20 years, I think of someone like a Shaquille O'Neal, who rolled up so many hundreds of different brand units through his master licensor programs, that it made his family quite a bit more wealth than they would have already had.
Yeah.
Individuals and families with significant wealth, are there certain strategies like that would be helpful for them to consider within the franchise and licensing space?
Shaq just took a call from a guy and he said, hey, I'm starting this thing called Five Guys. Do you want to be if you are our spokesperson, we'll, give you licenses or however they did it. And I know that he's a big fan of franchising. Look, franchising is the greatest wealth creation business model for families ever invented, in my opinion. Franchising makes businesses accessible to first-time business owners, corporate refugees, people that want to, and think about, like, if there's a quadrant, if we went Steve Jobs and we created a quadrant diagram and it was called wealthy families, businesses would be in the top left corner of that four square diagram. And it's for very specific reasons. Number one, businesses allow you to take advantage of the tax code. So you're not paying employment tax and on the wages on your W-2 income. You get to accelerate depreciation. You get to buy a 6,000-pound vehicle and write it off. You get to buy a piece of real estate and rent it to your business. And then you get to do a cost segregation study and depreciate things at a different rate. And you get to write that off. So you're deferring taxes in all the ways. And then really, if you look at the extreme example, if you continue to build businesses and you take what you learned inside of that franchise, Then maybe in additional businesses, there's people like Peter Thiel with Palantir, who has $5 billion inside of a Roth IRA because that's where he started the business. And he put his shares inside of that. So that's tax-free for life. They can't get at it until you're 60 or whatever, and you got to take it out. But at the end of the day, the stepping across the line into business ownership is the beginning of creating a world of assets that interplay with one another to create wealth. And franchising is the safest, most accessible ways for families to step across that line the very first time. But not only that, there's very, very sophisticated groups of even private equity or search fund people that are investing and rolling up multiple franchise locations, because franchising is a leverage play and it creates leverage at all levels. Everybody shares the expense of acquiring customers. Everybody shares the expense of building technology. Everybody gains equity inside of the model. So it's really done well. And there is a perfect balance to franchising in the terms of the fees that people pay and who does what. But as long as it's a good, honest, straight down the middle franchise model set up for everybody to win, then it's an incredible way to build wealth inside of that. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. I've developed this awareness that there's a couple other things that businesses do in people's lives that they're not so aware of. One is that it allows you the freedom to pursue your own curiosities. So we're on a podcast. I assume you like doing a podcast. I like doing a podcast. If I was a W-2 employee, they would not pay me to do this podcast. I get to educate myself. I get to spend time with incredible people like you. I get to promote the business and the businesses and the industries that we're in. And then I get to learn. I get to build capabilities by going to places like Strategic Coach or YO or YPO or EO. So businesses allow you the freedom to choose to pursue your own curiosities in pursuit of making yourself a better business owner or garnering the resources that you need to build your business. And the other thing that it does, and many people don't realize, that one of the predictors of success as an entrepreneur is an early entrepreneurial experience or exposure. So if you're the first time business owner, and I had a class of like 12 franchisees that I did training for this week, and about 8 of them raised their hand and said, this is my first business and I'm the first business owner in my family. I said, you don't realize what you just did. Your children, your nieces, your nephews, your aunts, your uncles, your brothers, your sisters, they're going to watch, and this is going to be hard, by the way. Like, we don't tell people it's all unicorns and bubbles. Like, business is hard. You're going to be dealing with you're dealing with the public. You're dealing with employees. When somebody has to do something hard, you have the somebody shirt on. It's you. But you're also inspiring anybody in your universe that would one day think about taking a lesson from your example and taking control of your own destiny. And so the businesses. So I feel like I'm providing a noble purpose here by providing honest, high capability, high average unit volume, good businesses, and making them accessible to families. And so that's the role of, and then what do you do from there? And here's the other thing that we tell people, which is, I think, unique because I've never heard it in the franchise industry before. Most people, when they're talking with their franchise candidates, they're very myopic. It's what's right in front of you. It's like, okay, you're going to go through the process. We're going to work through the documents. You're going to get your award. You're going to do your onboarding. Then you're going to come to training. Then we're going to get you launched. But we make sure that we spend adequate time talking about their outcome. Again, the business is there to serve the franchisee, not vice versa. So it might be that based on their time frame and whether it's retirement, college, whatever it is, that they should build this business with the intent to sell it in 4 or 5 years. And that, or some people want to build a legacy business, a generational business that people are going to be in it for decades. But whatever the outcome is that they put up on the board, as long as they don't get flat and happy, meaning they don't stop growing, because growth is everything, grow or die. Then we're okay with people building a business and exiting it in 4 years or 5 years or 6 years because that's what they intended to do. And by the way, if you're always understanding what your business is worth and where you're going, you'll make better decisions along the way. Is it this employee that is okay today, or is it this one that can get me to the next level? You invest in the one that can get you to the next level because you know that there's a next level that you're trying to get to. So it's and first time business owners, like they're used to doing the next logical step in front of their face versus working from a powerful and bold future that they've defined and then working backwards from it.
And real quick, I've spent 1,000 hours just researching and making this one gift for you, which is the ultimate planning guide, asset protection for family offices. I broke up the steps to structure your entities, optimize, de-risk, and scale your investments into stages based off your current portfolio. For over 25 years, we worked with some of the most stable, most winning family offices all over the world. You can identify where you're at by just putting in your business information. You just go to lumacree.com/protect, and it will send you this custom report that tells you Lumacree's anonymity and isolation techniques that we've learned from family offices. The triple entity structure that we've seen used time and time again across some of the most sophisticated and successful family offices. This is nearly impenetrable to liability. And you're going to see the equity stripping techniques I've learned over the last 29 years. This is our gift to you, completely free. The only thing is that on the thank you page, you can book a call with our team, and we can help you figure out how to get past those constraints to take you to the next level. Yeah. There's a great book that I read a few weeks ago by a Scottish pastor where he says, death is a preacher. Death is a preacher. That if you understand the very end of life, it'll help you live life throughout. In fact, if you have the end in mind, like you just said, it's very, very helpful for tying together not only the business life but also the family life. I found this in your book Discernment. There was this great Dostoevsky quote that you added about 2/3 of the way through, which I thought was very applicable. The second half of a man's life is made up of nothing but the habits he has acquired during the first half.
It's so true. It's so true. You know, it's and you know, I would even challenge that though to say not all of the habits we have are productive. So, you know, we've got to keep the good that we've learned works. We got to stay true to our values. And then we all still struggle every day, don't we? I mean, we all still struggle every day. So, you know, it's yeah, that's a good quote.
And I suspect it's the things that you don't do that are more important than the things that you do. Because it's always those things that, like for instance, last night I'm an early riser. I want to be up at 3:30 or 4, and I stayed up working. I didn't even go to my bedroom when I got home. I just went straight and sat down at my desk and started working when I got home. So I was in the office at 4:30 yesterday morning, and I worked till 2:40 this morning. And so it was a 22-hour workday, whatever it was, and got alarm went off this morning. I'm like, I can't do it. But it's because I was focused on getting something done, and it prevented me from doing all the other things that were second, that were lesser than that one thing. We're trying to launch 3 new businesses in the next 30 days. I've never done anything like this before, but they're 3 different brands in 3 different industries. We're just gonna see if we could do it. But one of those things just had to get done, and I wanted to do it, but I had to prioritize. And it seems to me that life is all about the prioritization of attention. That you can only really give your attention to one thing at any one time. That we try to split our attention, our no attention lands nowhere.
Right.
You never get anything out of that. The young men that you mentioned that are maybe first their family start a business, their first in sort of the entrepreneurial journey. Do you sense that they have, and you think about the search fund operators too, they're targeting recent graduates of high caliber MBA schools all over the country. Do you sense that the younger generation is more or less favorable to business success than maybe men that maybe came out of college 20 years ago?
That's a great question. So I had Jeff Hoffman on the podcast, who was the founder of Priceline and Booking.com, the inventor of the kiosk at the airport.
Wow.
Yeah, right. He was waiting on a flight, an old Continental flight, where you had to check in at the desk, and he missed his flight because they couldn't get him checked in time. And he's like, "There's got to be a better way." So he invented the kiosk, and then his whole world was around travel. And he has a huge global entrepreneur organization, and he says the applications that they're getting are maybe 100 times coming from places like Africa, other emerging economies and things like that. And he thinks AI has a lot to do with it in terms of their ability to ask a few, to get businesses stood up, to understand structure, to things like that. So I think there's franchising is accelerating at an accelerating rate. So there's 829,000 franchise establishments. More people are getting into business. It seems year after year, or at least that's what the numbers would tell us. And I also think that independent business owners, it's probably even more than a gig economy, because there's a lot of gig work out there, right? People can go get on Upwork during the day, drive Uber at night. You can do all the things, right? Are you in business that way? I think so. I think you're in business that way. But I think, I think that increasingly, particularly with AI, people are going to have more accessibility to the information that they believe they need. But I think the tenets of tenacity, like you just spoke to, Tommy Mello is a friend of mine, A1 Garage Door, and I asked him, what's the one sentence to make an impact in somebody's life? And he says, everything you want in life can be found in the work that you're avoiding. You can get on AI and have it write you a business plan. You still have to do it. That's the difference. So if you just want to go back and continue to play with Chat or Grok or Claude or whatever it is, and you don't apply it, then, you're not going to be much of just because you have a plan doesn't mean that a business owner it makes. So, but I do believe to your point that the older I get in life, the more it is that it's about what I subtracting to add. So taking, lack of focus, Jerry Seinfeld, I will quote, this is a quote from Jerry Seinfeld. He said, a lack of focus will always lead to a lack of greatness. And so, if you really are at a startup phase, it's going to take that 4:30 to 2 a.m. work shift. I mean, it's going to, sometimes it just takes that because there is nobody else to do it. It has to be done. If it doesn't get done, it's going to delay things for a week. A week down the road is a week down the road, and other things are going to shift and change. So sometimes things just have to get done. And many people just aren't willing to do it.
Yeah. You said, you made a comment on one of your podcast interviews where you were the guest. You said that feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Yes.
Feedback is the breakfast of champions.
That is mine, by the way. That's mine. That's the only quote that I have that has not been stolen. Well, borrowed.
It's yeah. I'll credit you, but I'm still going to steal it.
All right.
But the idea about what you just said, that if you can compress 2 or 3 days of work into one day, and you can do that repeatedly, you speed up the feedback process by speeding up the iterations.
That's right.
Right. And so if you've got and I think, guys like us, we're not working. We didn't come up working 8 hours a day. We're working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, some of us. And so we're putting in double the years. So by the time we've got 25 years in one business, we have the experience of a 50-year-old with the energy of a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old. And that is a significant advantage because you not only get the practice in, but you get the practice with the feedback in and applying the feedback.
Right.
It's this testing model, but it's also a model of humility, understanding that you don't know everything, that you're gonna F a bunch of stuff up.
Yeah.
So how do we, when you came up with that quote, what were you going through? What specific things were you thinking of? And then also number two, what does experimentation have to do with business? It seems like we're avoiding a lot of experimentation right now.
Yes, I'll ask you. I'll ask you, radical curiosity. What role has it played in your success?
Oh, quite a bit, because you begin to establish these disparate domains of knowledge.
Yeah.
And sometimes they turn into competencies, and sometimes you can put the competencies together and triangulate them in a way that gives a very, very unique sort of value that turns out to be a moat.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I've got one of my kids in particular that we like, I was the coach, he was the quarterback. You know, we did a lot of things together. I did a lot of things with all of my kids growing up, but in this one particular situation, he would, with all humility, ask me, not begging a compliment, say, what did you see in the game? What do I need to be working on? How did that go? Like, with no ego, with no begging for a compliment. And when I would give him the feedback, it wouldn't hurt his feelings and stuff. So, feedback is that's kind of where I got that, is feedback is the breakfast of champions, because we would do it in the car on the way to the game. What do I need to be thinking about? And I'm like, well, these kids asking for feedback all the time. So, and when people don't want feedback, like, how is somebody going to iterate on their process, on their successes, on their failures, if they just want to tell themselves that whatever happened was okay and not think about it anymore? So, I mean, really, humility, ego gets in the way, absolute humility. I mean, I think I am overly deferential to people. I'm really listening when people are talking. And sometimes I'll talk myself into the fact that I should have just told them that they were wrong, but I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like, sometimes I got to remind myself, like, I actually have the most experience in the room here, and I appreciate the thinking, and like, I could maybe buy into it, but no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. So give them the feedback. But now I will tell you, I get exhausted with people that don't take feedback and just argue with you. Like, they don't even let you finish the sentence. And so, going back to my question to you, is, somebody said, well, what makes, people will ask me, what makes a franchise owner? I'm entering this franchise. I want to be in the top 10%. What do I need to do? Well, it's two things. Okay. Number one is engagement. Positively, actively engaged franchise owners are 6.3 times, have 6.3 times the results of actively disengaged franchisees. Okay.
Wow.
Makes sense. If the owner is positively, actively engaged, participates in committees, shows up for the calls, brings their team, brings their employees, brings their salespeople, brings their technicians to regional events, enrolls them in training, gets them in all the groups, does all the things, they will be adopting everything at an accelerated rate. Okay, so that's actively engaged, but what about the positive piece? Well, our will has an inexhaustible resource, and we're programmable machines. Elon Musk said this really cool thing about, he said, how he says, this is a sidebar, this is a complete sidebar.
Oh, good.
He says, he goes, I'm not going to solve longevity. I'm going to let other people deal with that problem. He goes, but because I know it's just software. And the reason I know it's just software is because your right and your left arm don't age at different times. So basically, you have software that tells your cells when to stop producing this, when to start producing that. The cells will then start to age, will start to die, will stop to perform as well. It'll allow for other certain things to happen. He says, Gary Brecka even said, if you live another 5 years, you'll live to be 120, because we're going to solve the coding, and we'll just be able to reprogram your body just to slow down the aging process. Now, I don't know, man. My grandmother was 96, and she was altogether done with this world. I mean, nobody, she was, yeah. I mean, there's only so much Matlock that you can watch. I mean, but anyway, that was a little sidebar, but back to the engagement piece of it. So, but we're programmable, right? So there's this thing in football called having dirty eyes. right? And if anybody out there has played any safety or any cornerback, like if you get caught looking in the wrong place, if you get caught peeking in the backfield and you're playing man to man, and that receiver cuts the other way, you're gone. You're like, they've lost you completely because you got dirty eyes. Or if you're playing a zone and you get caught looking at the wrong key or looking at the underneath route when your responsibility was behind you, you've got dirty eyes. Like your eyes betrayed you. And it's the same thing in business. It's the exact same thing in business. You can get dirty eyes by talking to the wrong people, exhausting your will from 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. by scrolling TikTok versus preparing for the day, having a routine, practicing your gratefulness, going in the sauna, listening to a right podcast, studying, reading, whatever it is. So, business owners, it's funny. The subtext of my book is called The Business Athlete's Regimen for a Great Life Through Better Decisions. And that business athlete piece is very intentional. It's like, how do these people spend $200,000 all in and their stuff to buy do a big franchise buy with us, and then they come to training and they don't even watch the video? Like, are they really training? Like, what are they putting their eyes on? So when you talk about being actively positively engaged, are they positively engaged with the best business owners in the system, the best business owners in their community, positively engaged with all the right material that's going to get them to be a better business owner, to grow them as entrepreneurs, leaders, managers, all the things. And so that's the one thing is engagement. The other thing is this radical humility piece of it. Like Damon Johns, man, it's like he's got his 3 things, and it's like the number 2 is like, do your homework. Before you take an action, get the landscape, dig in a little bit, ask a couple questions. How lazy is it to make a business threatening decision not using all the available information that was at your fingertips? Not talking to, and then look, you can't have analysis paralysis, but at the end of the day, like if you're going to be investing your time, energy, and money in something, you should know as much about it as possible. So, so when you talk about feedback being the breakfast of champions, you only get feedback if you're open to it, you're engaged, and if you solicit it, you're curious. And that's like how that all ties together. And I learned that from a 7-year-old quarterback.
That's so fantastic. You mentioned,
well, good, because I just made that up. Glad you like it.
I wanted to get into the business athletes conversation too, because it seems to be a very niche type of personal branding for you. You had this great quote. I'm gonna read this quote as well, which I thought like this is right out of the gate on the book. You said business athletes read scenarios, not rules.
Yeah.
Business athletes read scenarios, not rules. Walk us through that.
That's it's the best training is scenario-based training. Okay. Memorization in and of itself can be useful, but is not effective. So, the concept of discernment, other than the obvious biblical connotation, is discernment is cumulative. It's basically wisdom accumulated over time by experiences. And so that's why usually when you find somebody that you consider to be wise or that can share good experience with you, then they're typically older because they've just had more experiences. I think young people are just as smart as older people. They're just less experienced. So they don't have the context. Like, I mean, I hate it when you talk down to kids. There's some 15-year-olds that I think have more capacity than the 55-year-old sitting there in training. Like if I had to choose one, I'd choose the 15-year-old just based on the way they think, and that kind of thing. So, discernment really comes from having all of these experiences and then being able to whatever your current scenario is, being able to take your previous scenarios and apply it to the current scenario. So it's more multidimensional than it is saying, well, every time, because look, here's the thing. And I've heard this, I said this, I don't know where I heard it. Now I hear everyone in my office saying it back to me all the time. Two things can be true at the same time. Two things can be true. Jordan Peterson, like nothing is all the way good or all the way bad. Okay, so if you try to apply hard and fast rules to critical situations, you could be wrong. Because yes, this is true, and this is also true. So the concept of discernment really is that anything can go to zero and nothing is 100%. The quality of your decisions only changes the probability needle. It doesn't guarantee success. Your batting average of quality decisions that you make on time, directionally, are going to increase the probabilities for your success. But you could still be Enron. You could do everything. You could still be, Arthur Anderson, or,
Yeah.
I mean, somebody could shred something and now it's, now he's ruined it for everybody. And so anything can go to zero and nothing is 100%. So your ability to look at a scenario and make an experience-based scenario decision is just going to take your success from 67 to 72%, let's say. Right. So that's kind of how that plays out, is because rules, hard and fast rules, I think maybe you're 35 years old and you develop a certain hard and fast rule about something, but now that you're 55 years old and you're facing a situation and you apply that rule to it, it could be altogether wrong, because you're different, the timing's different, the market's different, your relationships are different, everything's different. So I think, if you're really a great decision maker, you have the primary drivers that are core and central to it, which I'm going to suggest are more of your values than your rules. And then around that, you've got the peripheral of scenarios. And you have to say, all right, if I do this and this, what's the probability that it's going to get the outcome what are the probabilities? Where are all the outcomes? One of the guys I know that I think made the most money I've seen easily, he worked with oil and gas companies all around the world. And his job was to tell them where to dig. That was it. That was his whole thing. And everything he did was scenario based, probability models. And, he would be, the oil and gas, they would pay him tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to put him on the spot. It was crazy.
Wow.
Crazy. And that's really when that was the first time that, and all he talked about was scenarios. All of his teaching was around scenarios. So when I was writing the book, I was influenced by my interaction with him at the time.
And scenarios seem to me to have a lot to do with iterations. That the more scenarios you can find yourself in earlier on in life, that there are more scenarios that are within the same context. So what I mean is that if I find myself in a scenario of conflict with one individual who has one sort of worldview in business, and then I find it 2 or 3 years later, the same sort of person has the same worldview in nonprofit work, and the action and the results were identical, I could probably begin to make some generalities. It still needs some customization, but I begin to see that it's not it's not primarily a contextual situation. It's a personality driven situation. And so we see these correlations that compound, and the scenarios I think are very important, like you said, because if we can get those in different contexts, we find out whether it's the context that created the scenario or if it was something different than the context. Right? I could say that I never get along with church people, so I'm never going to go to church.
Right.
Well, that's probably more about me than it is about the church people.
Sure.
It's definitely not about the building.
Right.
But I think like you said, it's a factor of humility, but it's also a factor of attempts at the plate, swings.
Yeah.
There's some function of that even, even those that have been around for a while, we still have to keep those swings tight. We got to keep them keep them swinging, and we can't get frustrated. So
Yeah, well, two of our family values were fail fast and move forward and trust yourself to take chances. I mean, you got to get swings, man. Like, by the way, most things in life aren't fatal. And if you screw up enough, the government will feed us. I mean, people have these irrational fears about taking chances and about that. But I want to go back to what you said. If I know you were going somewhere, but let me just go back to something you just shared. And you said, if I had this experience with these types of people, okay, and then you have the same experience again with the same type of people. So now you create a rule that says that I have this out whenever I deal with this person, then I'm going to deal with I'm going to have this. I have this expectation, which is now you are just painting with a broad brush, probably.
Yes.
So, but what do you think about this? So, I've identified. There's many ways, but I've identified 5 ways people make money. Okay. And I tell my kids, I said, before you go into business with somebody, and maybe before you go to work for them, identify how they make their money, because it will tell you how they're likely to act over time when it matters under pressure. So there's individual contributors, people. I mean, I've had IT guys that are not good team players, but they're individual contributors. They've got towering strengths, but they do their thing. There's a role for them in every organization. You needed some individual contributors that do something. There's team contributors, great teammates that want to be part of a team, come in. There's creators. These might be your artists. These might be your influencers today. They might be your authors, right? People that are creative and like to create things, and that's how they make their money, because they're super creative at doing whatever it could be. Somebody has a shop making some trinket or something like that, painting things. I don't know. Now you get into transactors. So many brokers would fall into this. And when you're dealing with highly transactional people, the relationship always takes a back seat. They're nice. They're good when they're transacting with you, but the moment the transaction over, it's like you can feel them shut off. And if they're ever not a transaction, if you're ever not involved in a transaction with them, they really don't want anything to do with you. And then there's enterprise builders, people that want to build companies, people that want to bring people along for the ride, people that understand collaboration, they want to build it. So if you're there's once you understand how people make their money, if you're looking at doing something with them now, are those rules? Are those scenarios? Those are more suggestions, right? I know that if I'm building a company, if I'm an enterprise builder, then I'm going to need transactional people doing my sales. I'm going to need team players doing my franchise coaching because they care. I'm going to need individual contributors, running my IT, because I don't want them talking to everybody about what's on everybody's computer. I need independent, so, I mean, you need all these different types. But at the end of it, I've had bad outcomes scenario wise going into business with transactors.
Yeah.
Because the moment that it gets hard or they're not making money in every transaction, they get very myopic and they take a short view of things. And sometimes business doesn't make sense if you believe in what you're doing. It's hard early. Sometimes, it takes a little harder and longer than you thought to get there.
Which one of the 5 are you? Enterprise builder?
I would like to think I'm an enterprise builder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like people. I like people to win. Obviously franchising is good for me because I am an empath and I care deeply about our franchise owners' outcomes. It's hard. And I see transactors building franchise companies, and, sometimes that relationship gets a little strained because it's too black and white. I mean, some of these are first-time business owners, man. Like, you got to care. I've had 800 franchise owners in my career. You got to listen to them. You know what? It's just because they're the 801st for me. It's their first time. It's their first time.
So good. So you mentioned it. You said brokers are transactors. I'm a broker. Uh, and
But you're a company builder.
yeah, but I don't enjoy that. I mean, I can do it. The I was thinking about when you said there were 5 types of people. I was trying to think about the thing that I like most. I want to get your feedback on this. There are really 2 things that I think I'm good at. Number one is I'm very good at building relationships and negotiating within those relationships. Not friendships, but relationships. Relationships that are predicated on some modicum of trust and competency or co-competencies.
Okay.
And these are mainly with people that maybe we're providing services for, or that we're investing together, that sort of thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is I'm really good at turning around the most difficult of situations, right? If it's a situation where something's underperforming by 3%, well, that's not going to whet my appetite.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something that is maybe like I'm working on the turnaround of a nearly a 50-story building in a major U.S. downtown right now, like that's a pretty cool thing. Like I can do that because everyone's going to know what happened to it, whether it was success or a failure. I like that sort of thing. I like very, very difficult situations, but in both situations, I primarily operate well with counterparties, or I guess co-parties, that are of extremely high competency.
Mm.
And that's been an Achilles heel for me over time. And I'm not certain if it's because I realized that very early that it seemed to be that way, or if it was because I always had this pride that I assumed that I was a high competency individual, and my pride interjected itself into these relationships, into these scenarios, and it sort of made sure that these are the only 2 situations in which I thrived, and that I also took enjoyment. So someone like that, give me some advice, give me some direction on someone that's trying to do better and be better.
What's your definition of trust?
The ability to set a long-term objective and for your partner to walk away knowing it's as good as done.
Okay. When do you trust somebody? Do you trust them? Do you trust them when they would act or react in the same way as you, given a set of circumstances? Or do you trust them when they're true to who they've shown you they are?
I would like to say this: the second scenario would be the closest. I also believe in the doctrine of original sin, so I believe we're all bad when we come out. So that's a big handicap right there.
Right. Yeah. So trust, for me, the bigger, the bigger our life is, and the more that we do, the more people will disappoint us, and the more people will disappoint. So my view of trust was when people didn't do what I would do, I would say, well, I don't trust them. But that's entirely wrong, because they've shown you who they are. So you have to trust them to be consistent, is what you're saying. When people walk away, they know that they got what they expected. So you're talking your consistency. Your definition of trust went to consistency. So, if you show me who you are, and then I choose to get in a business deal with you, as long as you're consistent with who you show, like people get upset when you show them one thing, but then you do another thing. And that's when, oh, they screwed me, or they took advantage of me, or whatever it was. So, you said you're good in relationships with, and so that leads to that point of high competency, right? So you want to be with capable people that you can count on to be consistent, to do what they're going to do. But I think that's the goal. I think it's their goal. We go our entire life going through hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people to find the 5 or 10 people that we can count on.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I don't know if everybody finds their 5 or 10 people, but like my circle is pretty small, that I would say, hold on to the rope, I'm going over the cliff type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's a shortcoming in me, obviously, probably.
No, I would say that if a man has 5 people he can trust like that, you probably have more than 99% of humans on the planet, right? I tell my daughters the same thing. She said, Dad, I only have three or four, like all you need is two good friends, maybe one good friend is really all you need.
Yeah. That's why I had 3 kids, just so like if something happened to one of them, they'd still have brother.
Yeah.
just had to have one extra.
I read a story in the book about your daughter who was in some sort of equestrian competition of some sort.
Yeah.
Are your kids in? I mean, you mentioned I guess football or baseball, but are your kids in niche types of activities like equestrian competitions?
Well, they're out
Sort of
now.
one-off?
They're
Okay.
out now. So she, yeah. So my kids are now just for posterity. I guess we're sitting here in 2026. My kids are 28, 25, and 22.
Wow.
And my daughter Tuesday graduates from NYU Law School.
Wow.
Yeah. So she has her job set up, and she's a monster. I mean, just a real, she's great. And but so this is in the book, we talk about values, right? And family values, and I put them in the book. And this is whether it's your team, whether it's the people that are around you, whether it's your children, anybody, things will come back to you. And so when she decided that she was going to go to law school, it was a late decision. She graduated from Clemson. She had an accounting degree of all things, which was weird because she never showed any interest in finance or anything like that. I mean, but she was bouncing around, but she was a huge reader. I told her since she was 5 years old that she was an attorney because she's zero empathy. And she's incredible. She won the reading competition at the school for like 5 years in a row. And she just reads and she writes I said, you're an attorney. I already know you're an attorney. So finally, I guess she listened to me, but like she heard it. And so she says, hey, I think I'm gonna go to law school. So she studied for the MCAT or the LSAT, I guess the LSAT for like,
I think so. Yeah.
2 months. And she just barely gets a score that would sneak her into like a top 6, like a NYU. And she could have gone to some other schools that would have been less expensive and probably would have got a lot of scholarship based on her scores and all of this kind of thing. And then she laid it on me. She says, hey, didn't you always tell us to compete at the highest level that we qualify for? Right? And it's like, I don't ever remember saying it. It was probably around soccer or something like, do I go for this team or do I go for that team? I'm like, hey, you need to compete at the highest level that you can possibly qualify for. But, this is the importance as leaders of spending the time to put our values down, put our principles down, and make sure that we are incredibly efficient, which you wouldn't get from this podcast, with our words, in terms of a high concentration of valuable things that fall out of our face. Because people are counting on us as leaders. Everybody's counting on us to make them better and also to make ourselves better. Kind of on I don't know where we're going here, but you had asked me a specific question that you're good in situations with high competency people, and then you're really good at turnarounds. And you're a transactional individual. So is there a question inside of that?
How do I become a counterparty? You say you don't want to be in business with someone that's transactional. And I would assume there's a lot of other people like you.
No, that's not true. But I have said that it's because it wasn't the right deal.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've built businesses with incredible transactors. I built a brokerage, a franchise broker. We crushed it.
Really?
So no, yeah. So like what I'm saying is it's got to be the right kind of person for the right kind of deal.
Okay.
If you're building a franchisor, we get paid pennies on the dollar. I have to spend millions of dollars hiring teams, building technology, advertising, getting franchise owners, training them. And then when they're successful, some 3-5 years down the road, and they're paying us royalties, we'll make money. So it's it's a longer term. So in that type of business, like you need to, you're not good. You can't make money on every transaction when you're building a franchise brand in the early days. They're very profitable at scale. Like they're great businesses at scale, but they have to get to scale. Now, I've also built, very transactional businesses, franchise sales organizations, things like that, with some transactor business partners. And it was great because that's all we were doing was doing deals. So you have to match up the right people for the right deal, I guess is what I'm saying. And they have to have the right competencies for the right deal. And that was all I was saying. I wasn't, because I'm not putting a value judgment that any one of the types of making money is above or below any of the others. I think it's just all scenario based.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would imagine just as I can pivot to empire building, I've done that in multiple instances. You could probably also pivot if you need to for a time into a transactional role.
I plan to actually. I'm 58 years old. We're building this great franchise platform, but I already know what my last business will be. And I'm already setting it up and starting it for whenever, they put me out to pasture here at Homefront Brands. And it's a transactional business. It's 100% transactional business because I won't have the drag of the relationship equity that I have to maintain in that business. I'll get paid for what I know. We'll be able to, it's an education business. People can partake of it. They can leave when they're done. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But like, it won't be, you know what I mean? It'll be more transactional. So, so that'll be a good fit for me because, I'll want to do it the 5 days a month or 6 days a month or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be my that'll be my, that's the business that I'll die at the desk of.
Well, I'm interested to hear more whenever you get ready to share more.
Yeah.
Out of all the brands and all the industries that you touch and you look at, and I remember watching a podcast in the last couple of weeks with a business broker who touches a lot of different industries himself. Are there certain industries or business models that you like for their defensibility against the AI incursion?
Well, I like our home service and property service businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, if the robots are coming apparently, but it's going to be a while. So, and really I had read Kurzweil, The Singularity, prior to starting Homefront Brands, but it just wasn't very real.
Yeah.
The AI thing has really just, it's been overwhelming. So, look at all of the way that work will get done soon over the next few years is different, but I still believe that people are going to have to go out and put fences up and depending on who you listen to, we're looking at a shift of the way work gets done, but we're also looking at incredible prosperity. So, and people are going to need houses and fences and roofs and things cleaned and all of the things. I think we'll figure it out. So, but I think our businesses in the home and property service space seem to be good. When you talk about all of the millionaires that are getting created by all the little AI tools that they're building and selling, I had Sean Clark, who's the CEO of Go High Level Software.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
One of the fastest growing software companies.
Huge. Yeah.
I think he said they're second in they have 6 million companies using them. And a lot of people don't even know about them because they don't advertise. They really don't have a sales team. It's kind of a referral based system the way they do it. Listen to the podcast on Unemployable. It was a great podcast, but he says, AI is ultimately going to be a utility for companies that already have scale and customers to improve their products, but not charge their owners for it. So, I could go out and create an AI voice. There's videos online, and I could spend this weekend building an AI voice answering software, and it would work. I know multiple people that have done it now, and then I could go out and try to sell that to people But at the end of the day, he'll just build it and he'll just include it in his CRM, and now you have it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't cost, because the R&D cost and the coding cost is so low. So, you know, what does that mean for SaaS? What does that mean for advertising, content creation, even placing and running advertising campaigns? I don't know. I'm not going to go there. Like, let everybody figure it out kind of for themselves. But let me just tell you, I'm really, really happy that Homefront Brands is in every single business that we're in.
Good businesses to be in. Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
And we're getting very sophisticated, well capitalized, committed owners into these brands. So going really well. They think the same.
So my very first business when I was in college, I started in college down in Corpus Christi, but I was going to school in Oklahoma City, so it was a 9-hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
And the business was going around to property owners and like schools and churches and people like that, and offering firm flat fixed fee maintenance and property management.
Right.
So, you know, we need all the costs from toilets and lights, and we do the cleaning. We do everything for one monthly fee. And I got away from that over the years because it wasn't sexy enough. But my wife reminds me about once a week that AI's here, and B, the recurring revenue from that was far superior than transactional business, like the investment business and capital markets business that we're in right now. And she said also, number 3, like you were a nicer person back then. I said, yeah, I was a nicer person because I didn't have the energy to fight. It was so much operational work.
You didn't have the energy to fight with her. That's a mouthful of truth.
Well, I remember being out, you know, being 2 hours, 3 hours from home every night or two, and having to go fire people in the middle of the night. And, you know, you never had enough management staff to do a lot of that stuff. Well, at least I never, and we grew up to 400 W-2 employees just in Texas. And it was just a nightmare sometimes just to kind of keep controls over things. So we thought, well, if we bought our own buildings and we just serviced our own buildings, it'd be better. But it wasn't better because then you had tenants in the buildings.
Yeah.
And so we always imagined this great, you know, the grass is greener type of scenario. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have kept that business and reinvested in that business, because now it's looking very, 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 very smart.
Well, Rick, franchising would have set you free. I think Jeff Oda with Citywide, that same exact business, does I think $1 billion in his franchise model now. And I'm actually working with a company doing out of the UK, talking to them, and they do about $250 million US dollars over in the UK. They're looking to come to the States and do that same thing. Yeah, those are things that need to be done.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good business. But the other side of it is, I mean, a few years ago, maybe, you know, 20, 21, 22, it would have felt like the worst business to be in, because you would have had to staff it and getting people to do things when it was very difficult staffing in that coming out of COVID, because everybody got checks and was sitting at home. And I don't know the all of the factors driving it, but I know for us, it was very difficult to attract and retain people. Other companies were paying bonuses and all kinds of things, and wages escalated. And, you know, I had some clients in that franchise sales company business that were in the staffing business, and their franchisees really struggled to get and keep people. So maybe now, right? Maybe a franchise model would have changed that in a way. Gig economy, subcontracting to subcontractors type thing. But yeah. And then look, there's also robots that are cleaning offices now too. So who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Did I see a drone washing high-rise windows in one of your videos?
100%. That's our Window Hero business. Yeah. 15 stories we go up to, exterior building cleaning with drones.
Wow.
You know how many young people there are that would love to fly a drone all day as a job?
That's wild.
Yeah,
So no harnessing, no scaffolding,
that's right.
no swing stages.
That's right.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that. Because so I used to have a federal business. My dad owns it all now. It does kind of like difficult to manage federal real estate projects. And sometimes you're rebuilding the sides of, 6, 7, 8 story federal buildings, and you always have to wash the windows when you're done, that sort of thing. But when you get on the top of these big institutional buildings, they'll always have like a davit system, sort of a roof anchorage system. You've probably have seen these, I imagine,
Absolutely.
but just for the audience, these
Yeah.
daviting systems. So these daviting systems have to be recertified by an engineer, usually every 12 or 24 months in the major cities. And if they're not recertified, you can't use them. Well, to get them recertified, you have to hire an engineer, and it's $5,000 to $20,000 to get them recertified. They have to be load tested, so you have to carry weights up to the rooftop and measure the whatever else you measure on a davit before you can even wash the windows.
Mhm.
And so it's incredibly complicated to do. And it sounds to me like you just solved that.
In certain scenarios, yes. I mean, there still are some of our Window Hero franchisees do have swing stages and things, and they do clean commercial like that. But for many applications, even soft washing of roofs, things like that, we have a brand called Roof Scientist where we have a coating that needs to be soft washed before. There's lots of applications, or just a building. I mean, just the side of a big warehouse that needs to be washed down. I mean, you can run around this thing very quickly and do a very good job with it. So yeah, that's a rapidly expanding piece of our business. And it's robotics. Yeah, I mean, it's still robotics that's run by a human today. But who knows? You might just, I mean, one day will the car drive out all by itself and park next to the building and the thing just takes off and starts washing? I don't know. I don't know.
So you like heavy labor, operationally intensive businesses that are very difficult to be replicated by like fully autonomous types of substitutions.
Yeah, I mean, we look, for us, we like, but first of all, if we're going to attract sophisticated, well-capitalized, committed, serious business builders, then our businesses have to have the ability to scale. And so there needs to be, and we don't do numbers in this industry, we have some disclosure laws, but they need to be businesses that would attract that type of person coming out of corporate America, or somebody who's an existing business builder now that just wants to add to their portfolio. We're getting more and more of that. That's getting more and more important. So they got to have a certain size. We have to know that we have access to the customers. So we like markets that are somewhat fragmented, maybe still have a lot of mom and pops operating in there. Franchising is very good at bringing order to disorganized and fragmented industries, and bringing systems and bringing national marketing and customer acquisition, and laying our systems across and organizing a marketplace. So those are the types of things we look for. I mean, we and also too, in franchising, look, if you put a jet airplane out there, most people will crash it. We need businesses that are good for people. Like they're operatable. They can't have too much complexity to them. And a lot of our businesses, I mean, they're contracting businesses, so they can be complex enough. You've done it. Like there's a lot of variables dealing with the public and suppliers and all of those things. But at the core, they need to be businesses that we consider to be good for people. That means a certain simplicity to them, a certain margin profile, accessible customers that we can find and that we can convert and participate in that conversion. And so those are the things that we do. And then there's another thing about building a platform that says, there needs to be a reason that these businesses go together, other than just scrubbing together, cash flow and EBITDA. It's, you'll see platforms out there, they'll have a waxing business, and then pet walking, and then senior care, and then pressure washing. It's like,
Yeah.
It makes what's the deal? They were just, you went shopping and that's what you got.
Yeah.
There's a great platform out there that does Unleashed that has circles the kids. I mean, they have offerings for kids all the way up to the trampoline houses, but coding. Don't know about the coding business anymore. But education, sports for toddlers, all the way up through. So they literally, they have something for every phase of a 12, a 1-year-old to a 21-year-old. So that makes sense, right? It's like, okay, that's a thesis that seems to make sense there. So you got to have a thesis with what you're doing, and we like to shop. We like to fish in the same holes for our franchise owners. We like franchise owners that have similar profiles, and so that we kind of know who our person is for our businesses and that. So we haven't been perfect. I mean, we've had a couple of false starts inside of it, but yeah. So that's kind of what we go for.
So I had thought for a long time about trying to systematize the commercial real estate brokerage businesses, specifically on the buy sell transactions, even just on the listing transaction side. I think a lot of brokers waste a lot of time with lease listings. We've done a lot of lease listings over the years. But you've got AI as a threat there. You have these big listing services as a big threat there as well. For businesses like commercial real estate brokerage and similar, consultative types of services, do you see any marketability for spinning up new brokerage brands in those specialties in the franchise space?
So franchising works best when a product or service needs to be delivered locally by a human. Because if not, then you could just centralize everything and deliver the work, right?
Yeah.
So inside of a real estate transaction, somebody needs to show the property. Somebody needs to, see the property. I don't, I've been through a lot of real estate closings, and to me, a real estate closing is something that should be automated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the same paperwork. I mean, there's an attorney in the room, but it's just paper.
Yeah.
Doing the thing. So, if you look at, Remax, Century 21, those were all franchise models. Did exceptionally well. I mean, lots of these brokerages are franchise models. So,
yeah.
It's, would I start one today? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. What is the role of an agent 5 years from now, in your view?
It's the iterations, but I think the iterations over time will be able to be replicated by AI. They're probably already being able to be replicated by AI. Just the transaction experience.
Yeah.
So for instance, like so I and my team have executed about 300 successful commercial real estate transactions since 2020, more or less. My personal investment yield is 40.3% IRR, 40.3% IRR. And so I think I don't know if there's a lot of clients that wouldn't want to have that sort of IRR and would not want to have someone with that sort of iterations again, negotiating that. But I suspect there's a large percentage of them that would rather just do it themselves and AI and save that fee, because the fees are massive.
Yeah. But I mean, a good investment banker is worth a lifetime of money. A good realtor is worth, somebody who can stand tall in the pocket, negotiate the deal, get the deal done. I mean, that's worth a lot.
And it seems like a disinterested party does a better job than an interested party, because a disinterested party can walk away from the table at any time.
Right.
And somehow the counterparty always knows whether or not you're able to walk away from the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, I think it's like, I mean, in the real estate industry, true or false, you tell me, you're in it. 20% of the agents do 90% of the deals.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, one thing about AI is it's going to replace the marginal people. And the people, you know, there's always room for talent. You know, now my barber, take a look at this haircut. It's the last time you'll ever see it. My barber's moving to Pensacola, and they bought a house, and they looked at 30 houses online. So they've never seen the house they bought, and they bought it. But they looked at 30 with an agent, and just, you know, they all had video tours and all of this, and went through it and looked at it from the drone, looked at the yard, looked at the neighborhood, saw it on the map, you know, walked the streets with the Google Maps, and that was it, right? So the technology allowed them to do it, but there was still an agent involved. I don't think they could have, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I also had somebody say that there's no real use for residential insurance agents anymore. Let's just offend everybody on the podcast here. But I mean, it's like, if you're paying agent fees, you know, you should be able to buy a residential insurance policy direct. Sans.
Oh, yeah.
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 You can go to Geico, you can go to places like that, and generally they're going to be cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that when we would go out for commercial real estate insurances for our own portfolio, we'd go to a broker to source that, and they would go get 80 quotes. I think the last year I looked at it 2 or 3 years ago, and they found one company that would actually quote it. I said, what's going on there? I said, well, no one wants to provide insurance on coastal cities. And so I was up, we have a big investment business is the main business, but I was up in the Northeast, and insurance companies are big capital allocators. They, you know, they're buying a lot of real estate. They're investing in a lot of funds. And I was in a conversation up there, and they were like, well, you know what it is we have these DEI mandates, and we have these ESG mandates, and there's certain cities that the people that allocate and manage our investment committee funds, they don't want us investing in. So like Miami and Houston and some cities in Florida, now they can invest in the West Coast cities. They can invest in Boston and New York. That's fine. But there's certain coastal cities that they don't want them to provide capital to, because they support different, different energy industries and things like that. They use the excuse sea level rise a lot of times, and climate impact for that.
Sure.
And so they're withdrawing the insurability from the market, and they're just not competing there because they have an ideology. It's not a profit driven motive. It's an ideology. And so it's really interesting the sorts of decisions these big institutions will make regarding their businesses that are not driven by merit or profitability. They're driven by something else. And a lot of times it's driven by what other people think of you.
Right. Yeah.
So there was something else I was wanting to ask you about is, you've got the book, you've got the podcast, you're training. I want to learn a little bit more about your content production, how you prepare for your podcast, how you prepare to do a solo episode. I've seen some of these feature episodes where you go out on site for the home brands and do. I think I saw a church that you guys retrofitted that was becoming a Christian school. And so I see a lot of content being pushed out. I know you've got a team there, but walk me through how that content gets chosen, how it gets edited, how does it get pushed out, And what are sort of the themes you're trying to build the content around?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we have, well, Jen, who you might have worked with here, who's in here today. I mean, we have a video, photography video expert, and also a podcast producer. So a lot of our content is, we shoot ourselves, and we work together on it. As far as what we're trying to accomplish, so we're actually just looking at traditional PR for our brands right now. But for the last 3 or 4 years, building Homefront brands, we chose to use social media and podcasting to get our word out. And so we drop a big episode like the one that you were on with us, which was great, on Tuesdays, and then on Fridays we drop something called the Franchise Friday. Now, all of the content, and for all of the consultants and people and agency people that we had, they're like, hey, you need to know who your audience is, and you need to just build content specifically for them. Now, that's fine, and we do. So our Franchise Friday is for people in franchising industry, franchise candidates, but we also want curious people. We want people that are, into self-improvement. We want people that want to know how marketing works. We want people that are interested in like your story or Andrew Zimmern's story or somebody like that. And we also want the podcast to be watched. So, so our strategy is, we want fun, famous, interesting people who have done something. And generally there's some journey inside of that that's going to be if we do the questioning the right way, then that journey will be educational by their experience to the people that are listening. And, and then it's a credibility builder because we're having these conversations and we get franchise candidates that are listening to the podcast and things like that. So, and then look, we want to make sure that we get the right match with our candidates. Like, we want them to know everything about us so they can tell us no. Like, if there's something that they don't like. So to do that, we have about a 66-day process in working with candidates. So one of the things that we do is every step along that journey, there is lots of video content to watch. So the episode you're talking about was Melissa Gibbs, who was married to J.D. Gibbs, who was Joe Gibbs' son, created a Christian faith-based high school here right down the street from us. And we've been friends with the Gibbs families for a long time. And I saw on their fundraiser that they were looking for security film for their windows. But you don't call it ballistic, you just call it security film and ballistic, whatever. But it's a school. And, and that would happen to be a service line that we do within our Window Hero brand. And so we use that as an opportunity to go out, bring a bunch of our franchise owners in, train some of them in this product or service authoring, do some pressure washing with the drone and all of those things, but also get to tell her story about the school. And then also get to tell the story of some of our franchise owners. Some in other television shows that we produce, we just go out to a location with our franchise owners and we'll spend 2 days with them. And then we'll turn that into a 30 to 45 minute television show. Who are they? Go out, start at their home, meet their family, talk to them about their process of what they did before, joining the franchise, then go out on jobs with them, work with their customers, look at the charity work that they do, because it's very important. If you're a community-based business, we think you should start by giving back, and you should have a thesis for who you are and what the change you want to make in the world is. So we have our CARES values, which are kind of our overarching values: community, accountability, respect, excellence, and servant's heart. And that's our values. But I also encourage franchise owners, if they want to build a faith-based business, to have a set of guiding principles that's unique to them. If they want to build a veterans-based business, whatever's authentic to them, like, this is their business. And if they're going to attract people to trust them, people buy from people they trust, not people from they like. But if they want people to trust them, then they're always going to have to be consistent with who they are. So you might as well start out building a business that is a reflection of who you are and what you care about. And so yeah, so we go out and we try to bring that through to candidates who are looking at that same business. Then they get to see a day in the life. Okay,
Yeah.
this is a family like me. This is what they did, and I see them doing the business, and I can either do that or I can't. I'm either interested in doing that or not. So the more content that we produce, the more opportunity it gives people to self-select in or self-select out. And that's really what we're trying to do is create a relationship with people that are be like, I've listened to 15 of your podcasts, Jeff, and I watched this and I talked to these franchise owners. And by that point in time, there's no surprises. So, because what happens is if we don't do a good job in educating them and they don't do a good job in getting educated, then they do a deal and they come in and now it's not what they expected. So a lot of a lot of our social media strategy and a lot of our podcasting strategy is just like telling people who we are, talking about things that business owners. What did I take 30 years slugging it out, learning, and what does that mean to a brandy new business owner coming into Homefront Branch today? How can they use that? The things you've brought up from discernment or feedback is the breakfast of champions. Okay, cute saying. What does it really mean? Like what is it? So how do I take that concept, use it as a trigger, and take an action of being highly engaged in this franchise system and practicing radical curiosity? Because I know that those are two things that are going to help me be successful. And it's all in wrapped up in that one tenant or phrase. So, that's what we try to do is just constantly be giving people tools to create a better life through business ownership on the home front with us or wherever they go. I mean, there's a lot of, we do pretty well on the podcast. Often some things pop, some things don't, but a lot of things do. And I mean, we have a pretty good listener group out there in terms of people that seem to listen to it every month.
Yeah. Content creation, ideation.
Mm-hmm.
How far out do you know who you're interviewing, what your podcasts are going to be about, and where do those ideas come from? And how's it materialize into an actual produced podcast?
Yeah, so I work a lot on referral. We reach out to people, once a quarter, we'll sit down and say, or I'll be watching something, or we'll see something. We'll say, put this person on the list, put them on the list. So we have an outreach going to guests that we would really like to have. And then many times, like I'll ask a guest after we close out, I'll say, if they enjoyed the interaction, who do you have that you think would be a good fit for the show? Usually we'll get one or two names.
Yeah. And
then we'll reach out to those person or ask for an introduction. And typically, we'll stay 2 months out and we'll go through spurts, right? If I'm traveling a lot, we won't get as much, but over the next few weeks, we've got, we'll put eight or 9 episodes down, and that'll carry us for a couple of months. And then on the individual stuff, good or bad, it is incumbent on me to come up with whatever's topical and turn it into a solo episode or a Franchise Friday, and try to really be putting myself in the position of somebody who's maybe a little bit scared or trying to get themselves over the line to decide, do I really want to leave this job? I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere with it, but yet it's paying the bills. It's comfortable. What do I need to, again, it comes back to do your homework. Like, what do these people need to know that would be helpful to them to make a decision to pursue business ownership with us or with anybody else? And that's where unemployable, I think being unemployable it's almost like the Matrix, right? It's, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you make the choice, to go out and to say, you know what, heck or high water, I'm going to take control of my own destiny. And the other thing is, look, you've got to succeed in the opportunity that you're in to get next opportunity. So you could say, well, I'm going to have this fence business and I'm going to build it in San Antonio, Texas, but that's probably not going to buy me the jet airplane. And you know what? You're right. It's not going to buy you the jet airplane. But if you can succeed in this business, what capabilities will you have learned? Have you made more money and been able to do it tax efficiently? Do you get an exit that's going to give you a pile of money, really for the first time in your life of some size? And then how can you take those capabilities, your ambition, the new you, and that capital and leverage that into the next thing? And that's really what it's all about. I mean, for some people, we are the end, and they build inside of our platforms for their entire career. And for other people, we're a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. As long as we know what we're building with the person. I mean, we're down for it. We're down for it. We want to work with people to help them.
The most stuck person seems to be the person making about $100,000 a year, where they're comfortable. They don't have enough to reinvest and go do something big.
Yeah.
And they're probably providing for kids or parents or something like that with part of that. So the unemployable angle, is that also meant to sort of nudge that person one way or the other? Like how much of your thinking is around nudging that person that's on the fence to do something, to make a decision?
The unemployable is really more around mindset and having people on that will continue to inform people's thinking about taking, I guess it is nudging, taking the plunge, right? One of the pieces, you should never give people advice. You should only share experience. And one of the experiences that we want to share is that, look, just like when I decided to franchise and I decided to sell all of our company stores around the Southeast under the franchise model and commit to franchising, I was able to coach over 30 seasons of my kids' sports. And so we have a 5-acre campus here with a 22,000 square foot building where where headquarters is. And we have a huge side yard that I got the league to insure, and I made it into a football field. And that's where my team practiced, because practice space was limited. You had to share a field with somebody. I was like, I have a football field right here. I'm just going to put the lines on it, right? And what I would tell them, I'd say, look, guys, once you step across that line, you cannot recontract. The decision's made. Yeah. You can't choose not to run, tackle, jump on the loose ball, do all the things. I said, you can, business owners, I tell them the same thing. I say, you can't recontract. You've already made the decision. Now it's just a matter of doing it. And a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes first-time business owners, they revert back to the employment mindset where they're like, well, I need to be done at 5. And if something's going wrong, maybe where do I kick this? Upstairs. They'll kick it back to us. And I'll be like, well, that's your business. You have to, you are the captain, there's nowhere to kick it. I think, an unemployable becomes a mindset to where you just know. I mean, I've probably started too many things, and I've had my failures and I realized that the businesses were fine, but as I got into it, I realized if I would have thought about it a little deeper, I would have realized that it wasn't the easiest dollar that I could make. And then when my time became a commodity, or when not a commodity, but when my time became short, it wasn't worth my time to give it to that business. And that's something that I talk to our franchise owners about. It's another mindset shift, is that they need to understand, they need to constantly be evaluating what dollars per hour they're working at. And, if you want to make $50 an hour, 100,000 a year, like there's lots of jobs you can do. And there are millions of things you can do. If you want to make $100 an hour, 200,000 a year, there's a smaller subset. But what if you want to make $200 an hour or $500 an hour? Now you're forced to think about how many people you can have employed and what sales need to be and how you can, now you're making a set of decisions. So I coach our owners to calculate, to start by building, by identifying what they want their exit to be. And then including their pre-tax exit sale number all the way through how much money they made the entire time they owned the business. And then add all that together and then divide it by the number of hours that they will have spent in the business. And now they come up with that. And I did that when I sold Advanaclean the first time. I went and I did the math and I figured out this is my dollars per hour that I made in building that business and selling it. And I established that as my floor going forward in any deal I was going to get into. And so that if I didn't see a clear path to making that amount of money per hour, and it could mean that I could only give something 5 hours a month, right? And it would, if I could give something 5 hours a month based on the equity that I had in it and what I perceived the upside was in it, then maybe it would be conforming to that. But if so now, like, if I'm going to hit that number, I've got to say no to almost everything.
Yes.
There's very few things I can say yes to, which is right back where we started this conversation with, what do you focus on? Like, what do you take off your plate and that? So, doing the dollars per hour, and it's, for people that are, sitting here in training, getting ready to start their first business, they're just like, well, that's a lot to think about. But the reality of it is, take a stab at it, but
Okay.
you're going to be thinking when you're doing, $15 an hour work that, it's probably not what you need to be doing.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to do it. I mean, there's things you got to look. I'm a cleaner, man. I like to take the trash out and clean the kitchen after we have a big meet the team day, or like after we have guests in or something like that.
Yeah.
And my brain's fried and all that. I like some menial work. I don't mind it. Like, back to my roots, man. Right at Chuck E. Cheese,
Yeah.
clean the kitchen.
I took the trash out in the kitchen about 15 minutes before we jumped on this podcast.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. Like, if I can do something, not too much work, but if I can kind of break up the day and walk out and get in the sunshine.
Yeah.
It's at least attack.
All work is honorable, Rick. All work is honorable. Some just pays better than others.
That's right. That's right. Final thing I want to ask you about is, what impact did Undercover Boss have on you and your company and just sort of on your life? Because I think a lot of people maybe recognize you from that, and just a really big opportunity there. But walk us through how that came about, and maybe some of the things that you learned through that process and some of the impact.
Yeah, I think it was 2017. I think it played in 18, but it was a 17 show. I don't know, for 16, 17, 17, 18. But look, they had a season set up, and then one of the bosses dropped out. You'd be surprised how many bosses called me when they were getting asked to do it and asked for my opinion, and then they never went and did it. People get fearful about that. And sometimes the show doesn't go well. So they called us through our PR firm, and, they came in, they shoot a sizzle reel, and they bring in a whole crew, and then they take it back and they pitch it to CBS, and CBS decides. They said they turned down 9 out of 10, and they decide if. So anyway, we got it. We got the offer. We only had a couple of weeks to work through all the contracts and stuff because they were short like one episode, and they needed it. So, it was we got hurried through. That's probably fortunate that we said yes so quickly. And now, but I did. If you look in the book, there's a set of family values, and one of the values is always do more than is expected. And I got that from Coach Jerry Moore from Appalachian State, that he would write that down on that's how he signed his footballs. Always do more than is expected. And we adopted that as a family value. And when we were talking with the family about doing this, I said, hey, they're offering us to do this show, Undercover Boss. I said, but realize this could change things for you guys. You're in middle school, you're in high school, the perception's going to be that we're wealthy. The perception's going to be this, the perception's going to be that. We didn't present that way. We didn't present that way, but the way the show shakes out, I mean, you've got to give away like $250,000. So, and it's on national television. So, but, the family was like, well, look at the values, trust yourself to take chances, always do more than's expected. So when you look through the value set, like you couldn't not take the opportunity. So we did it, and we went on the road for some 16 days. There's some confidentiality around how they do it. They shut it all down every year, and then they cancel a show, and then they spin it back up under a little different flavor. And they do an incredible job about creating the conditions for people to be able to get a very honest show out of it. So yes, there's a lot of conversations that are created, but the reality of it is all of the conversations that were had and the way that I had to present to extract those conversations was completely legitimate. And it was real people that had real challenges in life. And they talked to over 60 offices, and they ended up with the 5. And, one of them got cut. We had 5 great episodes. They told me, they said, you guys, your franchise owners are so good. You guys have 5 episodes. You guys that, many of these shows would kill to have, because it's like, yeah, we only got 3 good ones, and, we got to go do 5 minutes at the dog park with the kids, or whatever, to fill the time. And, but we had 5 great episodes. Our franchise owners were amazing. And it really reminded me, how important it was to get out there, and how proud people were to be flying the flag out in Seattle, Washington, or Indianapolis, or Atlanta, and all across the country where we went to film these episodes. And that, these people were literally giving everything they had to build these businesses in these communities. And I came home on a Saturday, and I came in the office on a Sunday, and we had like 9 principles with the business. And I literally, in that moment, just went on my little whiteboard I had in my office, and I wrote the CARES values out, like in 2 minutes. It's like, what did I just experience? What did I just learn? Like, what did I really just see? And I wrote those values, and I wrote the little phrases, and like, that is the values that we still use today here at Homefront Brands. And they're right for us. They work. We understand how to use them as a tool. So that was one of the big takeaways to get out of it. But it is the gift that keeps on giving. It was one of the episodes that they used a lot for reruns. So it must've been good, because it shows up overseas sometimes. It shows up in the UK, it shows up in Australia. And so, it was interesting, to do. And I think probably gave me an appreciation for promotion. So, committing to this podcast, being on podcasts like yours, doing the podcast that we do, I think it really helped us understand how to leverage assets like that.
And then family values from your book: live fun, be humble, respect others, stay on purpose, never ever panic, be a servant leader, fail fast and push forward, trust yourself to take chances, always do more than expected. Pick up Jeff's book on Amazon, follow the Unemployable podcast, and check out Homefront Brands if you're looking for some optionality to your career and your lifestyle. Jeff, anything else I missed? Where else can people follow you and check you out?
Yeah, just Unemployable podcast, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere that you get it. You can check us out at homefrontbrands.com to check out our amazing brands, and connect with me on LinkedIn, just Jeff Dudan, or go to my Instagram, Jeff Dudan. Lots of content there. And you can get a free copy of my book, Discernment, if you go to my Instagram, Jeff Dudan, Dudan, and click on the link and just give us your email address. You'll get a free electronic copy of Discernment immediately into your email, which is also available on Amazon. Rick, this has been an amazing conversation. I really, really appreciate it. You really did a great job today. And I'm honored and flattered to be on with you here.
Jeff Dudan, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the pod. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, DM me over on LinkedIn. You can just search Rick Walker TX. You can just Rick Walker TX over on LinkedIn. Feel free to DM me there. And you can watch this video next to help move your family, move your legacy, move your wealth and your wisdom to the next level. Thanks, guys.